Hey Math 8, I am coming at you, Rich here, part of Rick Witterson, coming at you with Lesson 2.1, page 111. We are going to be solving equations with rational coefficients. So, would you get your book and your pencil and your calculator ready, and let's get going. All right, so first we're going to talk about a vocabulary word of multiplicative inverse. Okay, so there are two numbers that have a product of 1, meaning if I multiplied them together, I would get a product of 1. So if you look at 4/3 and 3/4, they are called reciprocals or multiplicative inverses. We will use the word reciprocal a lot. And the reason that they're called that is because if I multiplied them together, I'm going to end up with a product of 1. That's an equal sign. 12 divided by 12 is 1. So define it. Multiplicative inverse is two numbers with a product of, yeah, that's it. Two numbers with a product of 1. Describe it. It is the flipped over version of a fraction. Doesn't it look like I just flipped it over? List some examples. So we have obviously 3/4 and 4/3. What about 7/8 and 8/7? And then here's one. What do you think the multiplicative inverse is of 3? It's 1/3. Some non-examples. 2 and 2.5. Those aren't reciprocals. 2/3 and 3/4. Those are not reciprocals. And then describe how a multiplicative inverse is used in division of fractions. You don't actually ever divide, you multiply by the inverse or by the reciprocal. You always multiply by the reciprocal. And you may remember in 7th grade when they talked about keep, change, change, or keep, change, flip, or something like that. We are going to ask that you know that that means that you, when dividing fractions, you are multiplying by the reciprocal. So, how can the action of the motorcyclist in the photo help you remember what the multiplicative inverse is? Well, obviously he's flipped over, so that's how we can remember. He is flipped over. Okay, so let's do some practicing here. We have what's called the inverse property of multiplication. It says, in words, the product of a number and its multiplicative inverse is 1. Basically, that's proving multiplicative inverses. So, for example, 7/8 times 8/7, I'm going to get 1. Or -3/2 times -2/3, I'm going to get 1. I just cannot have the bottom number or the top number over here be 0. A couple other words that we need to talk about here. We've talked about this before. The coefficient of a term is the number in front of the variable, and then the variable is, again, that letter that's going to change. So let's look at some practice problems. So it says, solve 3/4c equals 18, check your solution. Notice how I don't have any of the example stuff written? I want to show you what this looks like because the way it looks in your book is very odd and kind of hard to follow. So watch as I solve this problem. So the first thing you do is write the equation. The next thing you do is multiply by the reciprocal on both sides of the equal sign. What happens is these 4's diagonally cancel out, and these 3's diagonally cancel out, and I'm left with just c. And I'm going to bring it down. Sometimes it's helpful to draw a line through that equal sign all the way down so that you know whatever you do on one side, you do on the other side. So on this side of the equal sign, I have 18 times 4/3. I'm going to make 18 into a fraction, and I'm going to multiply straight across. 18 times 4 is 18 times 4 equals 72. So my numerator is 72. And multiply straight across the bottom, it's 3. Then I'm going to simplify that. C equals whatever 72 divided by 3 is. 72 divided by 3 equals 24. My final answer is 24. Okay, let's do another example over here on the side. You draw a line on your paper and I'll give you another example. Let's do 1/2 times x equals 18. We'll do that. Okay, so our first step is to multiply by the reciprocal, or multiply by whatever's in front of, undo what's happening between these two variables here. This is 1/2 times x. To get rid of that fraction, I'm going to multiply this side by 2/1, or the reciprocal, times this side by 2/1. Again, draw that line all the way down. Diagonally, my numbers will cancel, and I'm left with just x all by itself. And now I need to do 18/1 times 2. 18 times 2 is, if we don't know, in fact, I'll just do it. 18 times 2 equals 36. 1 times 1 is 1. Simplify that. X equals 36. Okay, so let's look at some more. All right, so you're going to pause the video. I want you to try these on your own. Remember, you multiply by the reciprocal first, simplify. Okay, go ahead and pause now. Okay, hopefully you have come up with these answers. I will show you the work. Notice how here I multiplied by the reciprocal, 5/1. Same thing on the other side of the equal sign. I ended up with x equals 60/1, or 60. In number B, I multiplied by the reciprocal, so I flipped over and I ended up multiplying by -9/2 on both sides of the equal sign. Over here, I did 4 times -9 and 1 times 1. I got -36/2. D equals 18. Down here, again, multiply by the reciprocal right here. It doesn't matter that that's on the other side of the equal sign. You still multiply by the reciprocal. So I flipped it over, made it 3/5, and did that on both sides, and ended up simplifying to n equals 9. And last, again, multiply by the reciprocal. So I flipped that fraction over to -7/6, multiplied on both sides of the equal sign, simplified it out to get p equals 28. Hope you did that well. Okay. Let's go. Now, here is another example. This one has mixed numbers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change mixed numbers to improper fractions. Okay, so instead of having 1 1/2 s, I'm going to have, goes this way, 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. So I'm going to have 3/2s equals 16 times 2 is, I don't know, let me do this. 16 times 2, 32, that's what I thought. So 33/2. Now I can multiply by the reciprocal. So I multiplied this side. Again, I want to isolate x and get it all by itself. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of 3/2 on both sides. Nope, that's not what I'm supposed to have written there. Don't write that, don't write that. I should have written 2/3. Diagonally the 2's cancel, diagonally the 3's cancel, and I have s equals 33 times 2/3. Now I hope you remember how to simplify before you multiply. These 2's cancel, and then 3 and 33 have a common factor of 3. 3 goes into this 3 here 1 time. 3 goes into 33 11 times. This is a 1 and this is a 1. 11 times 1 is 11/1. So I end up with s equals 11/1, or s equals 11. Okay, let's walk through the next example. Oh, it's some that you're going to practice. Okay, so again, change to mixed numbers, multiply by the reciprocal, and then simplify. Go ahead and pause now. Okay, if we uncover number D, you can see I changed to mixed numbers here, multiplied by the reciprocal, and I end up with 2.5 for my final answer. 2.5 equals C, or C equals 2.5. That color is pretty bad. In E, again, make those into improper fractions, then multiply by the reciprocal. This one's kind of a big yucky number, but it's right. -11 and 17/11. And last, make them into improper fractions, multiply by the reciprocals. Again, you can see how I simplified before I multiplied there. Y equals 2 2/5. In the equation, 3.15 equals 0.45n. The coefficient of n, again, this part right here, the number in front of the variable, is a decimal. So, again, no big deal. It says to solve an equation with a decimal coefficient, divide each side of the equation by the coefficient. So divide each side by whatever's in front of x, or n, or p, or whatever variable is there. So in this one, you should see in your book that they have divided by what is in front of n. So we're going to divide by 0.45. That cancels out, and n is left all by itself on that side of the equal sign. Whatever you do on one side, you do on the other. So divide this side by 0.45, pull out my handy dandy calculator, and I do the work for me. 3.15 divided by 0.45, and I end up with n equals 7. And again, we want that variable first, so put the n on the left, n equals 7. That's the walkthrough of what you just did in your book, or what you see happening in your book. So, would you practice these? Divide by the coefficient in front of the variable, and bring down the variable, and do the same on both sides. Go ahead and pause now. Okay, let's uncover and see what happens. You can see in number G, divided by what is in front, I divided by the coefficient on both sides. Use my calculator, I got t equals 7. In H, you should have divided both sides by negative 1.4 to get negative 2. And in I, you should have divided both sides by negative 5.6 to get k equals 2.3. Okay, Layla's softball team won 75% or 18 of its games. Define a variable, so there's the first thing we're supposed to do. Then write and solve an equation to determine the number of games played by the team. So we are going to define n as number of games played, and it tells us that we're trying to find the number of games. Okay, so they won 75% of their games times the number of games, and that equals 18. So we're going to divide by the coefficient on both sides. Draw that line down. 75s cancel out. N equals whatever 18 divided by 75 is. 18 divided by 0.75 equals 24. So this chick won 24, or not won, they played 24 games. So 24 games played. Oh, I hope I'm not writing in my head. Okay, so you need to practice these. Remember, these ones multiply by the reciprocal, and here you're dividing by the coefficient. And then I want to highlight this. Define a variable first. So what are we trying to figure out? It says right here how many pages. Then write and solve an equation to determine. So you're doing three things. Define the variable, tell me what you're solving for, write an equation, and then solve your equation, okay? We will start here tomorrow, and we see you on the flip side. See ya.